Chalo. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, sir.
So we started with SA 501, right? Continuing with the standards, audit evidence, specific consideration for selected item. And I told you we are going to learn about three specific selected items here. One was inventory, the other two were litigations and claims, and your segment reporting. Litigations and claims and segment reporting. So we have already done what? Inventory. So audit procedure with respect to inventory, if you remember, we have to first try to attend the inventory counting whenever like possible, unless it is impracticable for us to attend the inventory counting, and thereby we, after attending the same, we have to evaluate the management instruction, how they are instructing the staff to record and to control the entities inventory counting. Similarly, we have to observe. Remember, we have to observe. So these two were the things which we are actually not doing, but rather client is doing. We are just evaluating what management instruction, and we are just observing. But doing the main work is done by whom? The management. Now the next 2 points were with respect to what we have to do. We also can inspect the inventory, inspecting the inventory, and I told you test count. Yes, right. So these are the 4 points that were very, very important. So whenever inventory is material to the FS, so we have to obtain psi. We have to obtain psi, and I told you particularly we have to obtain psi with respect to existence and condition, not the ownership. This is an exam question, MCQ question. That is why I'm laying more emphasis. Not an exam question, not an I don't think it's an exam question, but I guess somewhere it has been asked, right, in the MCQ. So you should also be wary of this, that it's a psi with respect to existence and condition. That means we have to just evaluate whether the inventory exists or not actually, and the condition of the inventory, whether is it proper or not. So we evaluated four procedure: management instruction, evaluation, then observation, then inspection, inspecting the inventory, and then test count. Like the way we used to obtain audit evidence. How do we used to obtain audit evidence? What are the methods to obtain audit evidence? Anyone? Methods to obtain audit evidence as a 500.
Oh, I see.
OICI, right? So O for observation, inquiry, confirmation, calculation, and analytical procedure. Then finally your inspection, right? So similarly here also observation, inspection, and then performing test count. Obviously I told you that few of the items you can pick up, and in each and every box there should be at least 10 items, suppose. Then you will just test check whether the 10 items are there or not. So just a sort of surprise performing test counts. And then lastly, you will tally your books or recorded figures in the books versus the actual results what you arrived at after physically verification of the inventory. And this procedure you can also term it as TOC, doesn't matter, because it is also actually in a way evaluating your controls, and thereby you are testing the controls which is implemented for the inventory. And also you can see it as a substantive procedure. That is what they are saying. So just remember that ye jo puri procedure, this procedure, entire procedure what we have performed, could be TOC or could be substantive procedure, doesn't matter. Now the special circumstances arise when, in case suppose inventory counting was conducted not on 31st March, but that is not on balance sheet date, but rather on a separate date. So you just have to do what? Attend the inventory counting on a separate date, but reconcile, because as on 31st March the inventory we have to evaluate, and as on the date when we are actually doing the inventory counting, suppose 10th April. So 10 days purchase sale, reconcile it with the 31st March inventory. Similarly, you are unable to attend the inventory count, then I told you what? Okay, fine, doesn't matter. Just pick up some another day and visit the inventory counting. That means what? If suppose you are not able to attend the inventory counting as on 31st March, then okay, no problem. You can just visit at on an alternative day, suppose 10th April, and then some physical count you should definitely test count something. So test counting you can do, inspecting the inventory you can do thereby, but do not forget to evaluate the intervening transaction, that is between the 1st of April till 10th of April. So this intervening transaction you have to evaluate. I told you first was with respect to I intervening transaction, right? Remember, first this like looks like what? I. Then second, cutoff procedure. If you remember, cutoff procedure will properly have to be followed. Third, Three discrepancy. I told you that if at all there is any discrepancy from the physical counting versus the actual records in the books of accounts, then you have to accordingly treat the same. And fourth, I told you looks like what? Fourth, I told you looks like W. W stands for written representation. You should also obtain written representation with respect to completeness of the accounting and completeness of the treatment that you have given to the inventory. Similarly, written representation should be obtained from the management that they have followed the proper procedure with respect to inventory counting as on 31st March. That means when they had counted the inventory as on 31st March, they had properly evaluated all sort of whatever the procedure with respect to inventory counting has to be. So they have performed the test counting, or they have performed their physical counting in accordance with those procedure. We have to obtain confirmation from this, and on 10th April we'll just kind of surprise check or test count certain stocks of the entity, and thereby arriving at our conclusion. And lastly, when you are not able to attend the inventory counting, that means what? Attendance of inventory counting is impracticable. This answer should be written only when they ask you. They ask you that attendance of inventory counting is impracticable, then what will you do? That means what? Whenever they ask simply normally that okay, you could not visit on this day because of heavy traffic, or whatever could be the reason, whatever the reason they give, then they will ask you if at all that what inventory procedure you will perform. Then you will write this answer, B wala, auditor unable to attend inventory counting. So then you will write that okay, fine, we couldn't attend because of this reason, then we can attend at an alternative date and perform test count and falna dhikna. But when they ask you specifically that attendance and inventory counting is impracticable, then what procedure you will apply? Then you have to write all these points that it could be impracticable because of the location of the inventory, right? Because of the threats to the safety of the auditor. These were the two major reasons because of which inventory could be impracticable. And they also told you that matter of general convenience won't be regarded, like cost, input, or whatever reason that you can come out with, which is not that relevant, which is general inconvenience matter. This won't be counted as impracticable reasons, and thereby you have to comply with SA 501, irrespective of the fact that you were unable to attend inventory counting. It has to be impracticable. It has to be in Pakistan, right? So Pakistan, you can remember this by example that okay, fine, we can't go to Pakistan ever, and that is therefore impracticable. Further, as explained in SA 200, the matter of difficulty, time, cost involved not in itself a valid basis for the auditor to omit an audit procedure for which there is no alternative or to be satisfied with audit evidence that is less than persuasive. So here I told you I have to perform three procedure. I told you what? Since mera aana is impracticable, I can't come actually. मेरा आना इम्प्रैक्टिकेबल है, एंड देयरफॉर आई वांट यू टू डू व्हाट? आप ही एक काम कर लो, मॉडिफाई कर दो। आप ही कर लो, नहीं तो मॉडिफाई कर लो। मेरा आना इम्प्रैक्टिकेबल है, आप ही कर लो। आप भी नहीं कर पा रहे तो मॉडिफाई कर लो। सो माय visit is impracticable. So what do you do? First of all, you perform alternative audit procedure. Alternative audit procedure could be video calling, could be inspection of the documentation, could be any sort of alternative audit procedure, or the subsequent sale of specific inventory items acquired or purchased prior to physical inventory counting. Similarly, if it is not possible to perform this alternative procedure, if you are not able to perform it, then you can modify in accordance with SA 705. And then last question we did in the last class was with respect to inventory under custody and control of third party test, TPT. So I told you, if suppose not test, sorry, yeah, if suppose the inventory is at third party or at custody of any other person, then you have to request the confirmation from that third person. First of all, external confirmation, same. Next essay we are going to start with that only, SA 505, external confirmation. Similarly, you can inspect certain inventory item, right? By visiting there, you can perform inspection or other audit procedure. If any case a doubt arises, when the doubt arises, that means if a doubt arises over the integrity and objectivity of third party, then you have to perform these four steps. That means either you can attend the third party's physical counting process, or you can arrange for another auditor, doesn't matter, right? Similarly, you can obtain the service auditor report, that means in the form of type 1 type 2 report, what are the controls with respect to inventory and any sort of report that you want. And then similarly, you can also inspect the documentation. This is the like the basic way to perform any sort of audit procedure. In the case of inventory, you can just directly what do, inspect the document, inspection of the documentation. And lastly, we did what? External confirmation, obtaining external confirmation. So we have revised whatever we did in SF 501, I guess, right? Now let's go to other two portions, two selected items, other two selected items. for which we have to perform now audit procedures. The first one being litigation and claims. Litigation and claims. So any point that you can come out with how you are going to check or how you are going to perform your audit procedure with respect to litigation and claim. Just think, litigation and claim, are they so like confirmed that this decision will be like what we are thinking of it to be? Bolo bolo bolo. Litigation and claim, are you sure of whatever you thought or whatever you think the litigation and claim, the result will be same?
No, sir, we can consult the legal counsel team. No?
Right. So we can consult the legal counsel team of the entity, right? Or if not, there is no legal counsel team in the entity, then you can consult the external legal counsel. They are getting thereby their opinion. If suppose they have hired external advocate, a high court advocate, then you can contact to them and see and evaluate the case at what position is the case standing in the court. Are we going to win? Are we going to lose? What is going to be the result? Most likely. So that is what they are saying. First of all, you have to inquire either with the management or within others within the entity. That is TCWG management. Inquiry karo kisi na kisi se, and thereby you will get to know what you will get to know the at what stage the results are at, results of the court cases. Similarly, you can also inquire in-house legal counsel if at all there is an in-house legal counsel, and if not, then you can also contact to their external advocate. That means external legal counsel, right? Now review. You can review two things. Review minutes of the meeting of TCWG, any sort of communication that happened between TCWG and shareholders, right? Because TCWG will have to communicate to the shareholder that this case is pending at court. If this at all comes, the result comes in our favor, then this can happen. If results doesn't come in our favor, then we might be facing going concern assumption, like, right? So that is all everything that is TCWG will have to communicate between entity and external legal counsel, whatever communication is happening. Similarly, minutes of the meeting, you can take board meeting, right? Minutes of the TCWG means what? You can see example BOD meeting and communication between entity and external legal counsel. I told you what example, High Court advocate. If suppose your case is at High Court. And lastly, you can review your legal expense account. So suppose legal expense account I started seeing, and the last year the expenses amounted to total 25,000, and this year the expense amounts to 25 lakh. So you can imagine that yes, I have to inquire legal expense, and thereby I'll get to know that why the expense is so much. Are you paying any interest? Are you paying any penalty? Or is it because of any sort of hiring of these advocates, right? So these advocates charge one lakh, one lakh per 1 hour or per a hearing. They charge 1 lakh. Advocate high court advocates and Supreme Court high court advocates even higher. So you can just review the legal expense account. How is it performing? Is it fluctuating by from the previous year or not? So IRR, we are going to perform what? IRR. IRR you used to perform in, right, in SFM. Similarly, we are going to perform IRR two times. First one being here, audit procedure with respect to litigation and claim. So remember, menu technique is IRR. You can just try to learn inquiry, review, and minutes of the meeting of the board of director, and inquiry also what? Inquiry also what? Multiple minutes of the board and legal expense account. Legal expense account. So this procedure you have to perform, and special circumstances procedure they have given, that auditor assessment of ROMAM with respect to litigation and claims. What all things you have to see? You can communicate directly with the external legal counsel of the entity. If law or regulation respective legal professional body of this advocate of this external legal counsel prohibits any sort of communication with the external auditor, that means what they are prohibiting, that no auditor, you cannot communicate with our external auditor, or sorry, external legal counsel, then you can performing what? Alternative audit procedure. An alternative procedure they haven't specified as such what you can perform, but yeah, definitely you can think of inquiring with others within the entity. Or similarly, if they are not providing with external legal counsel, then you can just also contact with inherent internal legal counsel entities, persons within the entity, or you can refer to past cases what has actually happened. So any sort of alternative audit procedure you can think of, you can do that if external legal counsel is unwilling to communicate or is not able to communicate because of legal profession. requirement, right? And then if you find that yes, I need to modify the opinion, then you can definitely modify the opinion in accordance with SA 705. If management does not accept your modification, that means what management is saying, that okay, don't worry, we will win the case. Why are you modifying the opinion? Don't worry, we are saying in our notes that we will win the case, therefore no need of provisioning. But however, according to auditor, provisioning was required, or at least a note and the contingent liability section was required. Therefore auditor is modifying the opinion because he feels that if the case is not won by the entity, then it might hamper the going concern, and that particularly the auditor is concerned about, because he will be now accordingly issuing the modified opinion. So according to auditor, if the case is not won by the entity hampers the its going concern assumption, and therefore it's issuing what modified opinion. However, entity is saying that don't worry, whatever we are saying will happen actually, so no need of provisioning, nothing required. And therefore in that case, what if management refuses to permit the auditor, if management refuses to permit the auditor to communicate, or external legal counsel refuses, or auditor unable to collect psi from alternative procedure, then you can do what? Modify. And lastly, written representation. Written representation you can obtain from the management and TCWG, whatever wherever you can get the written representation. So I hope it's very much clear. We have to perform IRR in special circumstances, connect with the external legal counsel, and if law or regulation do not allow you to contact or communicate with the external legal counsel, then you can simply perform what? Alternative audit procedure. And in case management refuses to permit you to communicate with the external legal counsel, or your second step, that is low, that is your alternative audit procedure is also not able to provide you with special audit evidence or sufficient appropriate audit evidence, that means what? Either you are not able to communicate with that external legal counsel, and neither you are nor you are doing what, able to perform alternative audit procedure. And in that case, if you are not able to perform both the cases, then you will do what? Modify the opinion in accordance with SA 705. And lastly, obtain the representation with respect to everything that the management is seeking or management is saying, claiming, because these are the things that is very subjective, and therefore you should definitely obtain written representation, or having at least something in writing is always preferable. Last point, segment information. Everyone clear till now? Any sort of doubt? Now you come to audit procedure with respect to segment information. Audit procedure with respect to segment information. They tell you what, if you remember Indes 108, have you done Indes 108 segment reporting? If you remember it, then we have to perform, divide the segment wise, right? So financials, and similarly, wherever the segment, the total is not coming out to be 75% or more of the total, then we have to also include, or I guess we have to also include other segments, so that the total of all the segments which is separately reported should be at least 75% of the total financial statement figure, right? And similarly, where other condition was, the those segments will be reported separately whose profits or assets are more than or equal to 10% of the total assets or total profit, right? So that was some certain criteria based on which you were doing segment reporting. That means doing what is, suppose we have certain so many division X, Y, Z, and therefore we have to specifically disclose this segment wise. That means how much X segment is performing and how better the segment Y is performing over X. So for that purpose, we are doing what? Segment reporting. Auditor has to do what? Auditor has to obtain psi with regard to representation. That means PND. So here segmentation is nothing but presentation. Already you have stated all your financials, right, in the financial statement. However, you are bifurcating in the segments because of presenting the same to the shareholder, right? Because of disclosure requirement in accordance with SA or in accordance with Index 108. So therefore you should definitely check what? P and D, presentation and disclosure, has to be mandatorily checked of segment information. So you will do what? For presentation and disclosure, obtaining a sufficient appropriate audit evidence for P and D, you will do what? You will obtain an understanding of the methods which is used by the management in determining segment information. So example just I was telling you was, suppose 10% of total profit or asset, as the case may be. So if your segment is exceeding 10% of the profit, or 10% of the asset, or 10% of the revenue, whatever can be the criteria. Yes, revenue was also one of the criteria, because I particularly remember, if suppose profit is in negative, then you will take mod of the profit, right? Positive figure you will take, and then total you will do, and then accordingly decide 10% of the total profit. For this was for the purpose of doing this 75% calculation. However, for 10% calculation, you can directly see that my profit is 10% or not of total profit, or my assets are 10% or more of not of total assets, and similarly for my revenue. So these are certain methods by which management can determine segment information. Of course, to comply with the regulatory requirement, they can simply follow what Ind AS. That means this 10% criteria. So whatever be the method of disclosing the separate information, segment information, you just check on the management. You just get an understanding with the management that okay, what is the method actually you are using for determining segment information, and then evaluate whether such methods are likely to result in disclosure. So evaluate that okay, fine, they are doing the segment reporting based on this. That means they are disclosing their 15 segments out of, suppose example, say 38 segments. So then you have to evaluate whether this will result in the disclosure which we will be comfortable, we as an auditor will be comfortable. That means what, evaluate whether the results or whether the such methods are likely to result in disclosure in accordance with the applicable FRF, and where appropriate, testing the application of such methods. Test the application of such method, whatever method they have applied in the entity, test this application. And lastly, performing analytical procedure or other audit procedure appropriate in the circumstances. SA 520 that we will do tomorrow. So you have to do what analytical procedure you can perform. You can obtain segment information related details, or evaluate the method how they are actually doing the segment reporting, and also consider whether the method will result into the disclosure, the kind of disclosure that auditor seeks and that the entity seeks, and even that the Ind AS wants you to do the same. Go through this question. Yes, gone through. So we are done with what? SA 501. Let's now start SA 505.